reset directed by thought is no reset. Let's investigate this. Our whole world is being taken down the direction of an enforced reset, deliberated and now instigated by the richest and most powerful and influential men our world has ever seen. Billionaires. 100 billionaires. Owning hundreds of thousands of millions of pounds. Men of great social power and prowess. These men have met over decades under the guidance of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum. These men are seen as the brightest among us. I do not mean to criticize, but I would like to question this conclusion. I would also like to deeply question the movement of this Great Reset itself. The Great Reset, originally known as the New World Order, has been on the mouths of many a politician, global authority figure, banker, CEO, and even royalty for some time now. Build Back Better appears to be the agreed upon slogan among others, such as "You shall own nothing and be happy," with a date for such joy in the world 8 years from now, in 2030. This is a very powerful global movement which has come out of a perceived need to act to save our planet from looming man-made disaster. Seems there are just too many of us, and we are just too destructive. Our world needs to change drastically to alter this desperate course, and the Great Reset is the thought-based model thrashed out at Davos and being released onto our world. These are the banking classes of our world, many a global leader who the World Economic Forum has actually apparently put in place through its Young Global Leaders Initiative. There is a plan, and the plan is unfolding, and the plan has behind it, presumably, good intentions. But we must tread carefully, for the road to hell, as we all know, is often paved with good intentions. I, for one, see many problems for humanity in this considered approach, and this is an interesting topic, for the problems I see were there before this all began, before the pandemic, which gave Klaus Schwab his narrow window of opportunity which came along. These problems have always been at the side of humanity. We have never questioned in this area, and so we have never come to understand. There is something eternally flawed about this Great Reset, a tragedy in the unfolding, but it is not that Klaus Schwab or any of the billionaires or politicians or royalty leading the way are necessarily evil. We all have something to learn. There is something we are not seeing, not deliberating upon, and that something is going to destroy our race. It almost already has. If we do not get wise and fast, we are done. We seek security by establishing order in our world based on authority. This is the manner our world works in and has evolved towards. But the authority of our world is the money of our world, for this is a primarily economically considered world before it is anything else. This world runs on the wheels of capital and finance, and so it is capital and finance and those who have traditionally held it over hundreds or even thousands of years, only a few men and women who come to direct and engineer the entire social environment of the great many of us. This is the movement every kingdom has ever invested within, the power of money and the might and control that money can buy. In this sense, we can immediately see that the Great Reset is not truly a reset at all. This is a traditional movement of those most financially viable among us, deciding upon the course of our entire world, of all of our future lives. It is a great continuity in this respect, before it is any great reset. It is the same story told over and over again through the entire sorrow-filled history of our species. The Great Reset is also a divided movement, one where the world's most financially viable, the powerful, the celebrity, the politician, are in a position of guiding the world towards their future conception. As stated earlier, the intentions shall be good, but I can see that the outcome will not be the same, and I would like to take the time to explain why. This is a story of limitation, a story of non-understanding of the human condition, and a suggestion as to where we may come to look, to come to act, to truly build back better, for the lives of us all and for the life of our planet, and every suffering species of life on this planet, unfortunate enough to be born on a planet shared by a race named mankind. We have not been living intelligently. We never have. Look back through history books, and you will come to find, since history began to be recorded, we have been engaged in acts of conflict and war. There is so obviously something inherent to us, integrated into us almost, which brings us to conflict and regularly come to kill each other in acts of magnificent violence. The story of human history is the story of your life today, for you are a human being. The story of humanity, if anything, is one of continuous aggression against his own species, and the never-ending sorrow and pain which must inevitably come to be carried within the human psyche by virtue of living this way. What is so wrong with us? Why do we live this way? Let's look exactly at how we do live, for if we seek to act without coming to a keen understanding of the problems we find ourselves within, we will only make them worse than they already are. This is my perception of the Great Reset. Although I am criticizing no one, I am merely pointing to what I see as factual and sharing this information with concerned and interested parties, wherever they may be. Our issue is one of conflict. Conflict arises from an inability for us to live together in harmony. We have never known peace, harmony, love, and trust between our people. These qualities simply cannot exist in a world at war as ours always has been. Pain, suffering, physical death, and despair exist in such a world, but you will never come to find love between people, empathy, sharing, and deep quality of relationship in such a competitive world. You will find bombs and profiting and despair and mindless pursuit of more, even though one may have more than one could ever spend. Our entire society has been built on an educated principle of competition, and competition is a subtle form of violence, one which denies cooperation. This is our world. This is our society, the one we have always lived under, the one which shaped our education, shaped our thinking, shaped our minds, the one we find security today living within. We live this way, surely, because we are divided. Stop and think a second. A war needs two sides. Two is a division among humanity. It matters not where the divisions lie. It may be financial, it may be conceptual, it may be religious, it may be political, it may be ideological, it may be economical. But division in its nature is divisive, and divisions between us are the necessary foundation, the absolutely required foundation needed for war, and for the continuity of the continual suffering our race has ever carried. Division is the beginning of war. This would appear to be natural law. Divisions are toxic to our lives, and yet we have come to evolve dividedly in every way possible. We are divided religiously among over 4,000 concepts. We are divided nationally among 195 nations. We are divided politically among many parties. We are divided financially. Some men holding over $30 trillion in tax havens, and yet a child dying every 5 seconds from starvation. In every direction you care to cast vision, you will find, wherever you find mankind, that division is the way of our lives. We gain security in our divisions, which is very unfortunate, for division is the natural precursor to conflict and war, which is where we are once again headed, inevitably, for it is integrated into our daily competitive approach to life, rooted in division. And now, back to this Great Reset. Please keep in mind no one is criticizing. We are not throwing stones. we are investigating, exploring what we actually come to meet. The Great Reset is a divisive activity, and so, in its nature, this is a conflict about to unfold upon humanity once again. The perceived wishes of a few, who have worked for and manipulated themselves into the positions of power in this world, are enforcing their collective vision for a better world onto the rest of our lives, and onto the world itself, of course. And perhaps there may be merit to this arrangement. Perhaps our planet might benefit, but at what cost to the majority of our human lives? Are we not a part of the life found here? And in being so, do our lives not demand the same level of respect, care, and consideration as the very environment we grew out of? We act based on what we know, which is a bank of knowledge our thinking depends upon, stored within our brain cells and based on experience. And this is the very root of all of our activities. Our actions all begin within thought. Davos and the Great Reset is no different in this respect. Human thinking has been the initial movement of this plan. Thought is seeking to solve a perceived problem. Thought loves to do this. And when thought tries to solve problems, it often comes to increase them. Look to history for confirmation. Look no further than your own life for confirmation. And there is good reason why. Thought arises within us from educated and otherwise learned knowledge stored in the human brain. Thought is therefore limited in consideration to its own limited content. In other words, thought cannot see the whole picture ever, and the whole picture is what brings understanding to life. Understanding comes from seeing the whole, not focusing on parts of the whole. Understanding our problems will come to solve them, not taking any positive action from a limited perception of what is being seen, and so acting within the dark field of ignorance of that which I do not know and so cannot come to consider. Without first examining and coming to an understanding of the whole picture, we cannot take a single step, and the Great Reset is proposing to do just that. Thought is never capable in this direction because of its eternal reliance in knowledge and the limitations that brings to its daily activities. Thought, based on knowledge arising from limited past experiences, is divisive in nature between us, and so approaches life in its every movement in a spirit of divisive self-protection and in hostility against another, and the other is also based upon a movement of thought itself. Thought is what divides our race. It is not advisable to engage in activities of division if we seek the solution of our life problems, which obviously must be approached in a spirit of great care, applying attention to the whole picture, and so coming to see the picture well, and in seeing, having laid that ground for appropriate and orderly action to follow. Action related to the whole, not to a controlling part's interests, which is only another division among men. No leader will ever be capable of leading us out of our communal situation, religious or political, or financial. No Great Reset will ever be the salvation of humanity or our planet, because leaders and Great Resets, like the rest of us, from royalty to pleb, from aristocrat to starved and homeless, operates from a ground of limited human thinking, arising from limited knowledge stored in the brain cells from limited experience. This movement is therefore divisive among us and the very root cause of our ongoing problems. In approaching our global problems utilizing thought, which is the root cause of our divisions and global problems, we are in effect attempting to put out a raging fire using even more flames. We need to find another tool, or perhaps we don't. Perhaps all we need do is come to see the true divisive nature of thought, see the absolute inherent dangers of living this way, and in such clear vision refuse any more to enter into any of its 10-year plans.
Number two, to feel always part of a community and to know that if the community does well, you will also do well. If the community, let's say, fails, you will also suffer. And number three, when I look at leadership, I think we call them global shapers, but in some way we want some to become global leaders. So we have to ask ourselves, what creates leadership? But for me, having met most or practically every leader in the last 50 years, I think it boils down to a very simple concept. A leader has to have brain, soul, heart, muscles, and good nerves. Let me just elaborate. If you want to be a leader, you have to be a professional. You have to know what you are doing. You will not know everything. You still have to take risks, but you have to be a professional. That's the brain. And then you have to have a soul, which means some guiding principle, some compass. And the compass can be based on deep values, which you have. And it can be based also on a vision, which you have of the future. But in any case, you know in which direction you want to go. The heart is the energy, the passion which you have behind of what we are doing. When I was a professor, students came to me and said, what should I do? Should I go into industry? Should I go into banking? Should I become an entrepreneur? I said, that's not a relevant question. You have first to ask the question, what am I passionate about it? Because if you are passionate about something, you will succeed. If you are not passionate, you will not only suffer, but you will not succeed. And finally, you have to have some muscles. You have to be able to translate your vision into action. And today you need good nerves. When I ask people who is combining all those five, the only person who really, in my opinion, in an optimal way combined all the five, brains, soul, heart, muscles, and good nerves, was Mandela. He always impressed me by bringing out all those five dimensions in his personality.
You know, we always want to be led. That's one of our beastly nature. We all want to be told what to do. Marx tells you what to do. Christ tells you what to do. The psychologists tell you what to do. The politicians tell you what to do. We're always looking for leaders. Better political leader than the present one. And a better political leader is always not good enough, but next one will be better. And so we keep this idea. Please, let's be clear on this point. There is no leader as far as I'm concerned. You can create the speaker into a leader, which would be utter folly. But the speaker is not a leader. We are together cooperating to discover the cause of all this misery of man. You have had 1,000 leaders. They've all failed.
I'm also sending to Congress a comprehensive package that will enhance our underlying effort to accommodate the Russian oligarchs and make sure we take their ill-begotten gains. We're going to accommodate them. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies. But these are bad guys. I'm also sending to Congress a comprehensive package that will enhance our underlying effort to accommodate the Russian oligarchs and make sure we take their ill-begotten gains. We're going to accommodate them. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies. But these are bad guys.
Well, insofar as there are problems at the moment caused by teething problems, people not filling in the right forms or misunderstandings.
We're worn down. None more worn down than our frontline health workers.
The anger palpable.
Town doesn't have a lot of money, but we have hearts of gold, Mr. Prime Minister.
No, you need.
This is an issue of. This is an issue.
Not working in Israel.
Of central bank explained that with CBDC as a replacement or a digital currency, they can make the rules of how the currency is used, and they can enforce the rules centrally. Let that sit in centrally. So one great activist said that the implementation of the passports is the end of human liberty in the West, and that is in fact true if we let this control grid go in. Robert F. Kennedy says you can't stop tyranny by complying. And so what I ask you, we cannot comply with the mandates, we cannot comply with the passports, we cannot comply with any part of a financial control grid, whether they change the name from passports and do it with biometrics and ID, whichever way they do it. So this is the fight for freedom and liberty. And what I will tell you again as an investment advisor, most of our wealth in the West comes from the benefits of freedom. And when you give away freedom, you give away anything. When the World Economic Forum says it's 2030 and you have no assets and you're happy, what I hear is it's 2030, we have stripped you of your assets, which may include stripping you of your children, and you're mind controlled. Ladies and gentlemen, don't let that happen.
Ricky Butterworth, or it might be Cindy Butterworth, says, where do you stand on the Great Reset the Liberals are planning on introducing? Well, let me just say that, first of all, what is this Great Reset? Pierre Poilievre, the federal conservative finance critic, recently raised concerns about this, and then he was attacked by some in the media and by the Liberals for supposedly circulating conspiracy theories. Well, The Great Reset is actually the name of a book by a very prominent advocate of it. His name is Klaus Schwab. He sent me a copy. I guess he sent one to probably every government leader around the world. And Klaus Schwab's thesis in his book is that governments and societies, the world, should, quotes, seize the opportunity of the public health and economic crisis to reimagine the world and radically change policies. Now, in what ways? I would describe it as a grab bag of left-wing ideas for less freedom and more government, for more government intervention, for policies that would, I think, create massive poverty, particularly energy policies that he is advocating. So Klaus Schwab, by the way, is the president and founder of the World Economic Forum, also known as the Davos Summit. I call it the biggest gathering of global hypocrites in history. It's a little ski village in Switzerland, and every, I think, February, a couple of thousand super rich people, a lot of billionaires, millionaires, global CEOs, and politicians fly into Davos, men with hundreds of private airplanes. They go into Switzerland, and they spend a week basically lecturing the rest of the world, including especially working women and men, about how they should reduce their carbon footprint. The hypocrisy in that crowd is so thick you can't even cut it with a knife. And so, no, I'm not going to be taking any policy direction from Klaus Schwab or his ilk. And what I find offensive, look, the so-called Great Reset is not a conspiracy theory. It is an actual set of concrete proposals being advocated by some very influential people, and including apparently by Prime Minister Trudeau, who clearly alluded to it, referred to it, quoted from it, the Schwab theory, in a speech he gave to the United Nations a couple of months ago. So it's not a conspiracy theory to talk about that. Those are the folks advocating it. And I think it's perfectly legitimate for democratically elected leaders, for me to say, heck no, we're not going to exploit or take advantage of a crisis to advance a political agenda. If we're actually all in this together, like we keep saying, then how about we focus on the crisis, on protecting lives and livelihoods, helping people get through this, and how about after that, instead of exploiting the crisis to impose on democratic societies a whole bunch of failed socialist policy ideas, how about instead we get refocused on generating economic growth, on recreating some of the trillions of dollars of wealth that will have been destroyed, of restarting some of the hundreds of thousands of businesses that will have gone under, of obsessively focusing on getting the millions, the tens of millions around the world back to work. Those who have suffered most in the COVID era have been the poorest around the world. And so the notion that we would then drive them further into energy poverty through Klaus Schwab's policy agenda is, I just frankly find it offensive. So no, it's not a conspiracy, and nor is it a conspiracy theory. I think it's just very distasteful and regrettable that influential people would explicitly seek to take advantage of a crisis like this to advance their own political vision and values.
Question and contact, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name Which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's try again. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member was promoting open disinformation. That's not debate.
Is de heer Klaus Schwab, oprichter en voorzitter van het World Economic Forum. En hij heeft ook een boek geschreven met als pakkende titel COVID-19, The Great Reset. En mijn vraag aan de demissionair minister-president is: hoe beoordeelt hij de inhoud van dit boek?
De minister-president.
Ik ken het boek niet, voorzitter. Maar ik zou de heer Vermeijeren willen adviseren om niet al te veel in al die conspiracy-theorieën. Ik kijk ze ook allemaal op YouTube. Ik vind het altijd fascinerend hoe dan uitgelegd wordt dat 9/11 niet heeft plaatsgevonden of dat het allemaal anders zit. Ontzettend knap in elkaar gezet. Maar het is meestal wat het is, een conspiracy-theorie.
De heer Van Meijeren.
Nou, het verbaast mij dat de eerste vraag die ik aan de heer Rutte stel sinds ik beëdigd ben als Kamerlid direct wordt beantwoord. Dank u wel, maar het verbaast mij dat die eerste vraag direct wordt beantwoord met een leugen. Ik heb namelijk een brief in mijn hand die dateert van 26 november 2020. En dat is een brief van de heer Rutte aan de heer Klaus Schwab, waarin hij de heer Schwab bedankt voor het toezenden van zijn boek. En dit noemt een hoopvolle analyse voor een betere toekomst. Zou de heer Rutte nog even kunnen graven in zijn geheugen? Het is nog geen half jaar geleden, dus ik weet niet hoe lang uw herinneringen actief blijven. Maar waarschijnlijk is dit nog wel ergens op te graven. En mijn eerste vraag opnieuw te beantwoorden en nu eerlijk, alstublieft.
Nou, het eerlijke antwoord is dat dat een nette brief is. Waarin je helaas niet alle boeken die je toegestuurd krijgt van kaft tot kaft kunt lezen. Maar wel degene die je toestuurt een vriendelijke brief wil terugsturen.
Nou, dan zegt de heer Rutte dus eigenlijk dat hij niet heeft gelogen tegen mij, maar tegen de heer Klaus Schwab. Maar laat ik dan hier direct alsnog de vraag stellen. De heer Klaus Schwab die pleit in zijn boek voor het resetten van onze wereld, om onze nationale parlementaire democratie te vervangen door een globale technocratie. Hij pleit ervoor dat er een einde komt aan privébezit. En de heer Rutte is zich er kennelijk niet eens van bewust dat hij dit een hoopvolle boodschap voor een betere toekomst heeft genoemd. Hoe is het mogelijk dat de heer Rutte een waardeoordeel hecht aan een boek met een neocommunistische boodschap, terwijl hij dat boek niet eens gelezen heeft?
Dank u wel, de minister-president.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
My plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been created in education and mental health and start to build back in a positive way.
I have launched a booklet called Build Back Better, Britain After Coronavirus.
It's about building this country back better.
Growing conspiracy following it. It is called the Great Reset.
An unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live.
The great opportunity for reset.
The theory even calls Mr. Biden's campaign slogan, Build Back Better, a front for the conspiracy.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Build back better.
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy.